So I know a lot of people on booktube do their monthly TBRs. So it's like, what you're reading in September, October, November. I typically create a TBR for the season rather than a month. Also because a lot of times my books will cross over into the month, and so it's just kind of like, hey, I'm in a fall reading season. This is what I'm going to read for fall. Today, I'm going to share all the books that I am hoping to read in the next few months as the weather gets cooler and the mornings are more crisp and the afternoon sun is a little bit lower in the sky, and so it just makes it feel golden a little bit earlier. The leaves are going to be changing and falling. I'll be drinking more chai lattes here at home, putting on more comfortable sweatshirts, and sitting down and reading. So I'm going to start with my middle grade reads. So this is one that I found in a little free library. It is called The Mystery of the Jeweled Moth by Catherine Woodfine. And we've got two heroines, Sophie and Lil, and they decide to put on disguises and mingle in high society and try to solve the case of a missing item. My oldest really wants to get into mysteries, but I've been reticent to give her like murder mysteries because some of them, even my favorite ones, can be a little bit gruesome even for middle grade. So I thought this was the perfect toe dip into a mystery for this season. And who knows, maybe we will try to find, I think there's others in this series, I think, so we may try to find those too. This has been on my list for years. It is called The Strangers by Margaret Peterson Haddix. This one is The Greystone Secrets. So this premise is that there are 4 children, and one day they're sitting in their kitchen eating their snack after school, and on the news that their mother is also there watching with them, there are 4 kids that are mentioned as missing that have the same birthday, they have the same names, first and middle name, and they're shocked. The mother is shocked, and before they can ask her about it, she mysteriously vanishes, and so they are left at home in the care of a babysitter. And this is the story of them trying to unravel who are these people who have everything exactly the same, and unraveling that mystery. You can kind of see, like, here's like the solid color and then underneath the reflection. So I think it's a little sci-fi more than fantasy, but I could be wrong. And I really need to get this finished this fall because I've wanted to read it for so long. Then I have The 13th Sign by Kristen O'Donnell Tubb. And this is one that I found in a used bookstore last year and scooped it up to save it to read. I mean, I save books throughout the year, like, oh, that would be a great fall read. So this is the story of a girl who is named Jalen, and Jalen finds a book in the back of this like dusty, creaky old bookstore, and in this book it has the astrological signs, and there is a 13th sign, and somehow she unlocks that sign and it totally messes everybody up. People's personalities that are supposed to be a certain way based on when they are born with the stars in the sky have altered. Like, it's like policemen are no longer brave, lawyers are no longer cunning, and so it's everything messed up, and she has to kind of put the genie back in the bottle. So the text is not super small, and so I thought this was, you know, and it's only a couple hundred pages, I think 260 pages, so I thought this would be a great quick read at the middle grade level for this fall. Another middle grade book that I would like to read, I have on Scribd as an audio version, and that is The Nowhere Emporium by Ross Mackenzie. The premise of this book is that our main character, Daniel, is in like an orphanage in Glasgow, Scotland, and he is bullied. And so one day as he's running from the bully, he charges into this store that the proprietor asks the boy, "How did you come in? The sign on the door is closed." And the boy's like, oh, well, I was being chased and I needed to find a place to hide and I found this place. And so the man did some magic for him and sent him on his way. Well, the next day, the boy is being chased again and he manages to end up back into this store and he remembers everything. And the proprietor is shocked that he remembered everything because anyone who has been into the Nowhere Emporium does not remember it once they leave. And this emporium shows up kind of wherever. It seems to be on the move. And we kind of realize at that point that Daniel is meant to be an apprentice to this proprietor who has the thunderstorm eyes, and there is a nefarious character who is after the Nowhere Emporium, and he is always kind of behind it trying to find where this Nowhere Emporium is and the proprietor is, but is not successful until one day Daniel realizes that his mentor, who has taken him on to train him in this emporium, is missing. And we get the backstory of the proprietor and how Daniel is going to go about saving him. This is, I believe, the first book in a trilogy, but it just gives me middle grade Night Circus vibes, and so I wanted to give it a try. Next, I have a couple YA novels. The first one is The Nature of Witches by Rachel Griffin. She has a new one out, Wild as the Witch, I think is what it's called. But this one was very well received. I think it's her debut. I could be totally wrong. But Clara Densmore is an Everwitch, and the witch's jobs is to maintain the climate and I think control weather patterns, but definitely maintain the climate. And her powers are related to the season. So she's a certain way in autumn, a certain way in winter, spring, and summer. But I think she has to save the world from chaos, as you could imagine, and use her powers as an Everwitch in that. I just like the cover. This is called Pumpkinheads by Robin Rowell. I've read Rainbow Rowell. This one's I don't know how you can't read, how do you not read this in the fall? It's just so, they work in a pumpkin patch and it's at the end of the season and they want to end the pumpkin patch night with festivities befitting fall. So I might go into a pumpkin patch and read this. Next, I have Hotel Magnifique by Emily Taylor, and this is also a YA novel, and this is the story of two sisters, Janny and Zosa, and I don't think they're twins, I think they're just sisters. Yes, they're just sisters, and this hotel appears in their town, and so they decide that they are going to get a job at this hotel. And I think there is a little bit of a romance with a doorman, and there is this evil character that is the maitre d'. And so as the sisters are working in this hotel, they discover the magic that lies within this hotel, and they discover that it is hiding dangerous secrets. And so I think one of the sisters goes missing and then the other sister needs to save her. It's your typical trope of she has to risk everything that she loves in order to save the world. I just love the cover of this. So I have a couple more YA books. This is called Ravenfall. This is by Kaylin Josephson. So this is actually a juvenile fiction book, but I have actually started to read parts of this because on NetGalley they had a free chapter, I think, that you could read. I think it was just one chapter. And so I read that, and in my opinion, which again, take that for what it is, but there was more violence in this than what I would feel comfortable with giving to my middle grader. So I would put this more at a higher level simply because of the level of violence, and honestly it's pretty creepy too. So you can see that is the Ravenfall Inn, And we have Annabella and her cat Max, and this boy is Colin. And I've actually talked about this book because it was in my anticipated releases video for the third quarter of this year. The story is that Annabelle has this special power or gift that she is able to get visions by touching someone. So she and her magical family live at this Ravenfall Inn, and one night at a party, she bumps into someone and she gets this vision of this horrific death. And then the next day, Colin arrives at the inn because his brother has sent him there, and it turns out he was part of Annabelle's vision. And so they need to, together, figure out who the person was that she bumped into, because she didn't really see clearly, and figure out what mystery his parents had that caused them to be killed, and hopefully be able to find his brother. My understanding is there's Celtic mythology in this, and so the beast that is after his family is Celtic in nature. And the other thing is it's very atmospheric, because it does say in here that if Anna and Colin can't stop the creature by Halloween night, the veil to the other world could be torn open, which would spell destruction for the world as they know it. So that pulls in Halloween, so it's really a perfect fall read. Another YA book that I have on Scribd to listen to is The Witch Haven by Sasha Payton Smith. And this is the story of Frances Hallowell, which reminds me of Charmed, if anybody watched Charmed with the Hallowell sisters. Anyway, Frances Hallowell is a seamstress in 1911, and she kind of goes into this daze, and when she wakes up, there is a man who is dead at her feet, and she's holding scissors, which I think were the weapon. And so she is in big trouble, but she has no idea what happened. And she is basically collected and taken to the Haxahaven Sanitarium, and it turns out that it actually is a school for witches. She discovers that she has really strong powers. She also develops really strong strong feelings for a character named Finn. And I think there are staff, maybe other witches at the school, who are jealous of Frances's newfound powers. And so she has to kind of maneuver through her feelings for Finn, the revenge that she wants to get on the death of a family member that happened in her past, or being able to save the community of witches from this evil sorcerer or magician who decides that he wants more magical power. So everyone's kind of in peril over that. So she's really got to try to figure out how is she going to, typical trope, save everyone and also keep her newfound love, Finn. And this gives me such dark academia, found family vibes, and I can't wait to read this in front of a crackling fire when it is cold and blustery outside. Two really quick nonfictions that I grabbed. So I got The Complete Prophecies of Nostradamus by Henry Roberts. This actually has the English and the French, and then this Henry Roberts interpretation of what Nostradamus was talking about. I am not going to put a lot of thought into this, but I just thought it seemed so interesting, and I grabbed it, I think, in a little free library. And then next, I have The Mystery of Agatha Christie by Gwen Robbins. This is, it says, an intimate biography of the First Lady of Crime. Most people know that she went missing for a certain period of days. I think her marriage was a little shaky, I think. And so I think this really dives into, like, when I was flipping through it, I saw the one of the police officers that tried to figure out where she had gone with her disappearance. his career, I think, was like almost ruined through this because he was following what the higher ups had said, but that wasn't searching after her. And so the public was really like had outcry against it. And so I think it really impacted a lot more people, and I don't know that much about it. And so I wanted to read about that this season, since I'm not actually planning on reading any Agatha Christie's this season. I have The Once and Future Witches by Alex Harrow. This is at the turn of the century, so late 1800s, early 1900s. It's set, I think, in Salem, and there are sisters. Supposedly there are no witches, but these sisters want to pull up old magic to help them, I think, help women get the right to vote. I think that's what that is. So we'll see how far off I am. It says, a gorgeous and thrilling pan to the ferocious power of women. The characters live, bleed, and roar. So, very feminist. I found this in a used bookstore. It is The Machineries of Joy by Ray Bradbury. This is 21 short story tales. So one of the things that I like to do as it gets closer into October is light a candle and just read a quick short story in dusk. One of my favorite fall books is by Ray Bradbury, and so I just grabbed this. Next is Neil Gaiman's Neverwhere. I have read Graveyard Book, and again, it's one of my favorite fall books, and so I couldn't resist this when I found it in a used bookstore this summer. So this follows Richard. He stops to help a girl, I'm assuming that's her, in London. That small act of kindness kind of opens up his awareness to the underbelly of London that is not evident to your average person. I think not only has he discovered this underbelly, but he has fallen into it, and he's really trying to figure out how to get back to where he came from in regular London. The dark classic of modern fantasy. So I also just loved this version. Paid $6 for it in a used bookstore. It's hard to get a deal on Neil Gaiman. Okay, next, I found this in another used bookstore last year, I think, Dead Until Dark. This is by Charlaine Harris. This book is on what HBO's True Blood series is based. So this is Sookie Stackhouse. She lives in Louisiana and she has a disability, and that's she can read minds, and then she meets a vampire who she can't read his mind. So having somebody who has mind reading capabilities fall in love with a vampire just seems like a fun read. This is Shirley Jackson. We Have Always Lived in the Castle. I got it last year at Barnes & Noble, and the cover is really scary. And I'm a little bit intimidated. I hope I can read this. I will not read it alone, and I will not read it when it's getting dark like I am the Ray Bradbury. I will probably read this in the bright, sunshiny afternoon. And last, this one could probably last me the entire season because it is a chunker. It is, how many pages did you write, Susanna Clark? 782. This is Jonathan Strange and Mr. Norrell. Susanna Clark wrote Piranesi, and I have not read that, but I keep hearing about this, and it just seems like, yeah, it has Neil Gaiman's quote on the back of it. It just seems like it has all of the parts and pieces for what I'm looking for. So this is 1800. Obviously the characters are Jonathan Strange and Mr. Norrell. They're two magicians in England, and Mr. Norrell agrees to take on Jonathan Strange and mentor him. And they both kind of have different philosophies on how magic should be used. And so I think Jonathan Strange starts to kind of dive into the more dark magic, and Mr. Norrell is very kind of on the line, wants things to be done a certain way, and Jonathan doesn't agree with that, or maybe do what he's said that he was going to do. And so I think it's their struggle in their differences in magic and philosophy. And I think as Jonathan Strange's powers grow, so does his need for maybe trying to figure out if he's going to need to sacrifice his relationship with Mr. Norrell. I also wanted to try sort of like a cozy murder mystery. So I found Aunt Dimity's Death by Nancy Atherton. The idea here is that Laurie Shepherd is our main character. I think Aunt Dimity might be too. But she inherits Aunt Dimity's property. And when she goes to collect it and to, I think, start living there, she realizes that Aunt Dimity still has a spirit. I think because of that, it's a ghost story as well as a mystery. She's trying to unravel, I think, the relationship between her aunt and her mother. So again, it's not a super long read. It's 230 pages. And for just a cozy mystery that doesn't, you know, take a lot of time and hopefully isn't super scary, I thought this would be great to read too. Took a little break to make some tea. So with the Aunt Dimity books, I have, since reserving that in the library system, I've actually found a couple additional copies in some little free libraries. So this one is Aunt Dimity and the Duke. And then this one looks even newer, Aunt Dimity and the Buried Treasure. So this is a huge series that I did not really know about. So I figured I'll see how it goes with the first one. And because they were in little free libraries, there's not a big, huge loss if I'm not fond of the series. I can just donate these in another little free library. So the last one that I have to share for this video is The Fifth Petal by Brunonia Barry. And I found this in a little free library. First of all, I really love the cover. So part of the reason why I picked this up in the first place was because of the cover. But secondly, this is based in Salem and it opens up on Halloween night with the death of a boy, and there's some connection with his death and the death of some witches that were killed in Salem on Halloween night. And so I think this is a thriller, but it also pulls in this idea of the witches in Salem and the history there. So we will see. Thanks so much for watching. So I know this is a lot of books to read in the fall, but I am going to read them over September, October, and November. So I think that's plenty of time, except for maybe this huge chunker down here. But if you have any books that you're excited about for reading this fall, please feel free to leave them in the comments below. And if you have any input on what it is that I've shared here that I want to read, whether it is one of your favorite books or one where you're like, no, don't read that one, it's not worth your time, please let me know that as well. Until next time.